He had everything the world said was impossible for someone like him. A private jet, a billion-dollar empire, a name that commanded respect in boardrooms across the world. And yet, none of it could protect him from what was waiting at home. He wasn't supposed to be there. 3 days early. No announcement, no warning. Just a son who missed his parents and wanted to surprise them. A simple act of love. But the moment he stepped through that door, something shattered inside him. Not a business deal gone wrong. Not a market crash. Something far deeper. Something no amount of money could ever fix. What he walked in on that evening didn't just break his heart. It forced him to confront a truth he had spent his entire life trying to outrun. Could wealth really protect you from hatred? Or had he just been fooling himself all along? The young black billionaire returns home early. His name was Marcus Webb, and by every measurable standard, he had won. Born on the south side of Chicago, in a neighborhood where ambition was either beaten down by circumstance or sharpened by it, Marcus had chosen the latter. His mother cleaned offices for a living. His father drove a city bus for 31 years. Neither complained, neither quit, and without ever saying it directly, they taught Marcus the most important lesson of his life, that dignity was not something the world gave you, it was something you protected. Every single day. He carried that lesson into every room he entered. By the time he was 22, he had bootstrapped a small logistics startup from a second-hand laptop in his childhood bedroom. By 26, that startup had contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies. And at just 29 years old, Marcus Webb became one of the youngest self-made black billionaires in American history. The newspapers loved the story. The motivational speakers quoted him. Corporate diversity boards put his face on their brochures, but Marcus never forgot where he came from. Every year, no matter how packed his schedule, he made time for home, for his mother's cooking, for his father's quiet pride, for the neighborhood that had made him hard enough to survive the world and soft enough to still love it. That's why, when a deal in London closed 3 days earlier than expected, he didn't book a hotel or schedule meetings. He booked the first flight back to Chicago. No calls ahead, no texts. Just Marcus, his carry-on bag, and the simple joy of walking through his parents' front door unannounced. He was smiling the entire flight home. He had no idea that smile would be the last thing he felt for a very long time. The cab pulled up to the old familiar street just after 9 in the evening. Marcus stepped out, breathed in the cool Chicago air, and felt something he rarely felt anymore in boardrooms and 5-star hotels. Peace. He paid the driver, grabbed his bag, and started walking the half block to his parents' house. The porch light was on. It was always on. His mother never let it go dark, not even after 30 years in the same house. A lit porch is a welcome, she used to say. It tells your people you're waiting. He was almost smiling again when he heard the siren, short, sharp, the kind meant to stop you, not chase you. He turned. A police cruiser had rolled up slowly behind him, headlights cutting through the dark. 2 officers stepped out. Neither was in a hurry. Marcus stopped walking. He knew the rules. Every black man in America learned them early. Some from their fathers, some the hard way. Stand still, keep your hands visible, speak calmly, don't reach for anything, breathe, just breathe. Where are you headed? The first officer called out. Marcus pointed toward the house just ahead. My parents live right there. I'm visiting. The second officer looked him up and down. The tailored jacket, the designer luggage, the calm in his voice, and something about it seemed to irritate him more than settle him. You got ID? Marcus did. He always carried it. He reached slowly, deliberately into his jacket pocket and produced his wallet, handed over his license without a word. The officer studied it, then studied Marcus, then studied the house. Someone call this in? The second officer muttered to his partner. Marcus felt something cold move through him. Not fear exactly, something older, something heavier. Call what in? He asked, keeping his voice even. Suspicious individual, the first officer said flatly. Neighbor reported someone matching your description casing the block. Casing the block. A man with a carry-on suitcase, walking toward a lit porch on a residential street where he had grown up. Marcus looked down the row of houses. He already knew which neighbor, the one who had moved in 2 years ago, the one his mother had mentioned in passing, careful with her words, the way she always was. "He's not very friendly," she had said. That was all she'd said. A curtain shifted in a window 3 houses down. Marcus stood there on the sidewalk, a billion-dollar company in his name, his face on magazine covers, his voice sought by senators and CEOs, and felt the full, suffocating weight of how little any of that mattered in this moment. The officer handed back his license without an apology. "You're free to go." Free to go. As if he had been held, as if standing in front of his own family's home required their permission. He picked up his bag, walked to the porch, put his key in the lock, but before he could turn it, the door swung open from the inside, and what Marcus saw when he stepped through that doorway, what was happening inside that house, in that moment, to the 2 people he loved most in the world, stopped him completely. Everything he had built, everything he had survived, none of it had been enough to protect them. The young black billionaire returns home early. His father was on the floor, not collapsed, not fallen, on his knees, hands behind his head, fingers laced, the way you position someone when you want them to feel like they have no power left in their body. 2 officers stood over him, different ones from outside, already inside, already in control. His mother was pressed against the kitchen wall, her hands trembling, her eyes wide with a terror Marcus had never once seen in them. Not through poverty, not through struggle, not through every hard year that had shaped their lives. She was crying silently, the kind of crying you do when you're afraid that making a sound will make things worse. The house had been searched, drawers left open, cushions displaced, the framed family photos on the hallway table, slightly crooked like someone had brushed past them without care. The neighbor had made a second call. While the officers outside had Marcus's ID in their hands, someone had called in a reported break-in at the same address. Different dispatcher, different unit, no coordination, no pause to verify. And so 2 officers had knocked, and when Marcus's 71-year-old father had opened the door, a black man, alone in his own home, they had decided that was reason enough. Marcus stood in the doorway and could not move. He had given millions to civil rights organizations. He had spoken at galas about systemic injustice. He had sat across from politicians and made the case, calmly, articulately, with data and dignity, that this was real, that this was happening, that this needed to change. And now his father was on the floor of the house he had owned for 34 years. One of the officers noticed Marcus in the doorway and reached for his radio. "Sir, you need to step back outside." "That is my father." 3 words. Quiet. Absolute. The room held still, and in that silence, Marcus Webb, billionaire, cover story, symbol of what was supposedly possible, felt something he had no name for. Not rage, not grief. Something that lived underneath both of them, the kind of feeling that doesn't leave. The officers left without an apology. There was no acknowledgement of what had happened. No paperwork filed on their behalf, no consequence, no correction. Just the sound of a patrol car pulling away from a quiet street, leaving behind a family sitting in the wreckage of an ordinary evening. Marcus helped his father off the floor. His mother straightened the photos in the hallway, one by one, her hands still shaking. Nobody spoke for a long time. There was nothing to say that the silence wasn't already saying. That night, Marcus sat alone at his parents' kitchen table, the same table where he had done homework as a child, where his father had told him to dream bigger, where his mother had prayed over every obstacle he ever faced, and for the first time in a very long time, he wept, not for himself, for them. For the 34 years his father had paid a mortgage on a home he could still be made to kneel in, for his mother's silent tears, for every black family in every neighborhood quietly absorbing wounds that the world refused to call wounds. In the weeks that followed, Marcus did something unexpected. He didn't make a public statement. He didn't call a press conference. Instead, he flew his parents to every city where he had a business office, not to show them his success, but to sit with them, unhurried, and listen to every story they had never told him because they hadn't wanted to burden him. There were many. He funded legal defense initiatives, quietly. He restructured his company's hiring pipeline. He made calls to people with power and said things he had previously softened. He stopped softening them. Because here is the truth that Marcus Webb understood sitting at that kitchen table, and the truth that this story demands we all sit with. No achievement insulates you from hate. No title, no wealth, no amount of respectability rewrites how some people see you the moment you walk through a door. So the question isn't whether racism still exists. The question is,
What are you willing to do now that you know it walked into someone's home last night and will again tonight, and will keep walking in until enough of us decide that that is no longer acceptable? Share this story, because silence has never protected anyone.